It's not moving us forward.
Okay.
So let's go to
Speaking of moving forward, let's talk about the national dialogue. And then, Manzo, I'll start with you on this. Yes. So the national dialogue team has agreed on broadly 5 issues. The outstanding constitutional matters, which has Article 43, which is the cost of living, 2/3 gender rule, governance issues, inclusivity in public appointments and checks and balances, electoral justice and related matters, which is the second one. There's reconstitution of IEBC under that, boundaries delimitation, audit of the 2022 presidential election, and then there's the entrenching funds into the constitution, NGCDF, GAF, Senate Oversight Fund, and then there's the establishment and entrenchment of state offices, Office of the Leader of Opposition, Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and then there's fidelity to political parties. Herein, under that, is preventing interference with political parties. But you are in the process of collecting signatures.
15 million. 15
million to delegitimize the presidency. Has that now stopped because this is agreed upon?
Nothing stops that. The bipartisan talks are very important. The country must engage. One thing, it is clear that after 13 years, and initially we admitted that the 2010 constitution had some flaws, that 20% was not perfect. Yeah. At some moment it needed to be polished. And then came BBI. And unfortunately we have fallen into the trap of BBI. First, I want to appreciate...
No, before BBI, there was Punguza Mizigo.
There was
just acknowledge.
Yes. So I really want to say that...
and by the way, it went through all the 47 counties.
We'll come to you in a bit, yes.
Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and Honorable Ichung'wah have done a good thing to frame the issues. And I think... everyone agrees, even during the BBI time, we need to improve certain things in the Constitution. There are certain things which really must be done. Yeah. But unfortunately, the process can never be started by the executive. And the experience of the BBI is clear. I think you are going back to the same. We have framed issues. They will end up in a constitutional amendment bill. Now, that constitutional amendment bill, if it's not owned by the people of Kenya, it must be owned by the people of Kenya. It must go through proper public participation. Yeah. Then it means it is going to face the same as to happen to BBI. And it means then we'll be now... next election, 2027, is when the courts will be determining and we're back.
So this is definitely ending into a constitutional review?
Definitely. It must end up in a constitutional review, and you must also pass some laws in Parliament. One of the biggest problems you have seen there is cost of living, Article 43. Then you have the Finance Act, which increased fuel from 8% to 16%. Probably should have been done to 10%. And you know what happened in Parliament. In fact, I describe it as a fraudulent act of Parliament. You know the method used to arrive at that law, you would not really say was free and fair. There was a lot of cajoling, a lot of persuasions, a lot of twisting, and then the so-called numbers. Where, originally when the election ended, Azimio had 7 more members than the majority by 7 in the National Assembly. Yeah. But Kenya be what it is because of these political party issues. People have moved on. At some point, the Constitution allows them to do so. Yeah. You can change your associations, although it is regulated by the Political Parties Act. If you are resigning from your political party, then you must go back to the people.
Fair point. But now one of the agendas there is auditing the 2022 presidential election. How do you intend to do this while you already exhausted the entire process that is based in law, including going to the Supreme Court?
Even if you have been to Supreme Court, there is always audit of election results. It always happens after every election. Okay. There was an attempt to do so by the National Assembly in Mombasa. You always must check where you went wrong, and that's how you improve, in the next election. Okay. There is no perfect election, and even the Supreme Court held so. There were mistakes. It's not that this time around they didn't find the mistakes overwhelming the will of the people, according to the Supreme Court. That may not be correct. Okay. Electoral fraud is very common in many parts of Africa and even many parts of the world. Okay. And especially now with the new technology, which many people don't understand. All right. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's part of, probably there will be an amendment into the Elections Act and an amendment into sections of the Constitution which deal with election. Okay. So that you can come up with something strong. But by and large, I think they have done a good job to calm the situation in the country. There is something they have not not addressed, which is very important.
Yeah.
There should never have been deadly mandamanos.
Okay.
And unfortunately, if you hold mandamano in Eldoret, the police don't tear gas you, they don't even come near, even when you block the roads. But if you make an attempt in Kisumu or in Nairobi to hold mandamano, then you are tear gassed and people are killed.
Okay.
They have not addressed the deaths which have occurred.
Okay.
And I believe the cry of the mothers who lost innocent children goes to the high heavens. That must be addressed before we even talk about the bipartisan talks.
Okay. Let me bring Dr. Koto. Are you satisfied with the agenda of the talks, number one? And number two, 13 years later, is it time to review the Constitution?
To be honest with you, yes, we can review the Constitution in time, even 1 year after it was promulgated. But what I would say is this. An attempt to legislate or to constitutionalize an issue has to be embedded in one principle. You have to find what is the common good for society. We make laws for society, not for individuals. And if you look at some of the agenda items there, all of a sudden we're talking about the position of a prime cabinet secretary, just because somebody is occupying that office right now. Illegally and unconstitutionally. So we want to try and rectify it. We are not looking at posterity. You know, we are talking about leader of the official opposition. Already in our constitution, and this is the ignorance I see even in the so-called parliamentarians, already in the constitution there is leadership. And I'm happy to be seated here with the eminent members of parliament, that when we went around this country in 2009, 2010 to finalize the constitution, although the debate had started much earlier from 2000 with the CKRC process that ended up at Bomas, and then of course the referendum of 2005, Kenyans said, no, we want to see a leadership that is functional within parliament. And that's why in the final constitution, which is the 2010, and I was privileged to serve in that committee of experts, we created majority leader and minority leadership, both in the National Assembly and in the Senate. Today, we are personalizing these discussions, and this is where Mheshimiwa Mahanzo is not being honest. We are personalizing this discussion because we have got people we want to accommodate within our political speak. Yeah? When people talk about leader of official opposition, I'll repeat it here. Opio and I is the official leader of opposition in parliament, in the National Assembly. Kimani Ichung'wah is a leader of majority in parliament. That is sufficient grounds enough. You see what Kena Mahanzo and the rest are doing. They are just not accepting that they have failed as parliamentarians on the three cardinal duties of a parliamentarian: to represent the constituency you came from, to legislate, and to oversight government. They are not doing that. They are running away from the platform they have been giving now to Bomas of Kenya, and to pretend that they want to address the problems that affect this country. For example, Trevor, Mheshimiwa Mahanzo has mentioned Article 43. Just for the avoidance of doubt, let's read Article 43. It's a very short article. And this is what it says. It's economic and social rights of a Kenyan. And it says that every person has the right, and I want Kenyans to listen carefully so that whatever discussion happens in Bomas, will we be able to achieve these economic and social rights as prescribed in the Constitution? And then a second question would be, what is government doing about achieving this economic social right? And it says this: every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to health care services, including reproductive health care. Is that a conversation at Bomas? Number two, to accessible and adequate housing and to reasonable standards of sanitation. Is that a conversation happening in the Bomas of Kenya? They are talking about just the cost of living, which is an abstract reality. Number three, to be free from hunger and to have adequate food of acceptable quality. Is that a conversation happening in Bomas of Kenya? No. To clean and save water in adequate quantities, to social security and to education. You know, let's not lie to Kenyans. This talks at Bomas, this so-called bipartisan. In fact, why can't we even learn from our neighbor country, South Sudan? South Sudan held what is called the national dialogue. And they addressed a number of issues. They went to Kenya. The issues that Mheshimiwa Mahanzo want to address, really, it also involved the people of Kenya. Then let's make it a national dialogue. Open it up to everyone. And let's say, okay, what is the problem with IEBC? The pretense about IEBC is the problem of individuals who never want to accept they lost an election. It's a problem of political class that wants to control that IEBC.
Yeah.
You know? So I see nothing wrong with IEBC, to be honest with you. If there's a problem within IEBC, then we must charge, just like the conversation we had earlier. If there are cartels around electoral malpractice, let's see people being charged. But let's not pretend we want to reconsider IEBC for what? I mean, in fact, I dare propose here, Trevor, that I mean, as just like Hanzo and the rest do not want to accept that, Punguza Mizigo was probably the best proposal for this country because it was centered on the common good for this country. We are even proposing, let's make commissions part-time. Why is election in this country, Mheshimiwa, you know, Kenan, a matter of life and death? And yet we don't see people being punished. For example, in 2017, I would have wished to see Azimio side say that because of the nullification of President Uhuru Kenyatta's election by the Supreme Court, and because Justice Maraga Emeritus, CJ Emeritus Maraga said that there were irregularities and illegalities committed in the transmission of results. The question then should have been, Trevor, who committed those irregularities and illegalities? And have we seen those people being arraigned in a court of law so that then we are able to fix the problem of electoral mismanagement in this country? But now we are just making it a rhetorical discussion at Bomas of Kenya. We are not involving the people of Kenya. We think that this country is about Azimio and UDA. Open it up. In fact, under the Political Parties Act, there are about 80-something plus political parties. So open this discussion, and we'll give you suggestion on what we think is wrong for this country.
All right, Honorable Kenan, are you satisfied with the agenda, the talks?
You know, there are certain things that we must accept. That first of all, the constitution that we have, and luckily I was in Parliament when during the agitation and when this particular document actually was promulgated. This is a man-made document, and certainly you expect a lot of mistakes. We have used it. We have analyzed the mistakes, the pitfalls. This is a time to do a bit of formative evaluation. That formative evaluation is not something that can be done by every Kenyan. It's something that can be done collectively by the leadership through a known format. That known format is a parliamentary process. This is one thing that my friend might not accept. And this is why from day one, we insisted that this must...
Which I was on the table when this constitution was and it's not only parliamentary.
No.
There is also the public...
No, we did.
Let me finish. I'll give you a chance.
Can I finish? I gave you time. From the beginning, that we insisted this thing must be anchored on a known process. A known process, there must be a parliamentary-driven process. Because, yes, there are 50 million Kenyans, but the 50 million Kenyans have decided to pass on to Article 1 of the Constitution to say that they will be governed in accordance with this through the elected, directly or indirectly through the elected representative. And therefore, it will be naive to ignore the role of the elected representative of the people of Kenya. That being the case, I'm glad that finally, the signatures that you have reminded, and you can see my friend here, you know, ordinarily Daniel Manzo is an excellent, very obedient legislator. And I know right now he's floating because a decision has been made by the owners of the Mandamando brigade. A decision has been, he may not be party, his disadvantage, he may not be party to that particular decision. Once...
So is Manzo being played?
I'm just saying, you know, there are followers and leaders. What I'm trying to say is this: Manzo is a very good, extremely honest and good legislator. For me, what is gratifying is, you see, we have attempted to make Kenya appear like a country in crisis through the Mandamando and other. Elections were held. I am glad that you've also alluded to the elections were held, supervised by IEBC. And there's no institution that is perfect. The same elections were subjected to some sort of disagreements. It went to the highest court in the land. And this, for information, there were 9 issues for determination by the Supreme Court. 9 issues. Maybe just for the sake of our viewers. There were 9 issues. 9 issues. The first issue was on technology. Technology. This is what the Supreme Court said. Technology deployed by IEBC met the standard. So they agreed. Number 2, no interference with the uploading and transmission of Form 34A. Second issue they ticked. The third issue was no difference between Forms 34A uploaded on the portal and those delivered to the National Tally Center. That was also disputed. They also agreed that there was no problem. Fourth, there were some postponements. Postponement did not affect the voter turnout. There again they ticked. Fifth, no discrepancies between votes cast for the presidential candidates and other positions, meaning the 6 votes from the presidency to the MCA, there was no major difference. Of course, there are no elections that are 100% perfect. You remember in 2002, Al Gore and Bush, there was a recount 4 times.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Bush won with 6 votes. America, how many millions voted? Tens of millions, you understand? The other 6 issue was the election was carried out in line with Article 138 of the Constitution. This is one article that has been abused. People quote it. 7th, the president-elect attained 50% plus 1 vote of all the votes cast. We say in Supreme Court. 8th, irregularities and illegalities did not affect the final tally of the presidential election. Stick again. The 9th one, presidential petition dismissed and each party to... The input of this, and this is why this particular bipartisan agenda is very good.
Yeah.
And I think my friend has forgotten, one of the issues being addressed is governance issues. So the issues you're alluding to, you know, they can't put everything here.
Yeah.
Once you are going to address the governance issue, for me, some of the areas that I expect them to address.
What does governance?
Just, you know, the general governance issues means all the pitfalls in our governance structure, all the issues, the missed opportunities, the pitfalls, the mistakes, they will look at it. One area that, and I'll be appearing before them, that I'll be recommending for them to look at are the workings of the Constitutional Commission, Chapter 15 of the Constitution, Article 248 of the Constitution, and say, look, we have 10 independent commissions. We have 2 statutory commissions, and we have 2 independent offices.
Yeah.
We need to look at the role. I was reflecting on the role of Public Service Commission vis-a-vis the functions of the presidency. There are so many areas that are overlapping. Look at the Senate.
Yeah.
And the National Assembly. These are areas that we must address and say, look, you are not going to have a seamless document. It doesn't. This document will always be subject to the changing needs.
Yeah.
See the dynamics. 10 years ago, the issue of social media was not an issue. Today, one must accept, as part of our governance structure, 2 things. We have had 3 traditional arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Right now, we must accept members of the 4th estate are the 4th arm of government. We must also accept social media effect is the other 5th arm. These are realities.
Okay.
It's not something that comes to... So it's because of these changing needs.
Yeah.
These changing needs, not only for Kenya, but globally, that we must also look at this document. This is a working document.
All right.
Trevor,
And then the other bits, my brother. And this is something that I must say it's also good. Civility is in politics.
Yeah.
It's not a sign of cowardice.
Yeah.
The fact that now the different political players have down their tools in the form of mandamando and have accepted boardroom negotiations, I think we must say common sense has prevailed.
Okay.
And I want to send my brother here, tell them kudos. That is the way to go about it.
Okay.
Not street protest.
You have a quick rejoinder.
And I hope this is negotiations.
Yes.
I'll say this. You see, they do not have necessarily to agree on every bit of it.
There's a given.
They have agreed that there's a problem.
Okay.
They have also itemized that as a result of the emphasis discussion on these particular items, the following issues will be addressed.
Okay.
On some issues, there'll be unanimity. On other issues, there'll be total disagreement.
Okay.
And that is the way negotiations are supposed to be carried out. And, and I want to commend His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, though his appointment to the group was suspect. And the honorable Ichung'wah, you know, Honorable Kalonzo is such a fine, civilized character. Honestly, let me say that I really respect. And I hope by the time we legislate the issue of official opposition, he will be the first occupant.
But on a very light note, where you know sometimes common sense is not common to everyone. So if you say common sense has prevailed, not necessarily. But I think, Trevor, one of the biggest challenge we have had in our country for the longest time, even though the agenda of governance is general, but I would like to see it being broken down to the specifics, for example, of the failure of leadership in this country, or political leadership in this country, and people holding public offices in attaining that governance. And that's why, for me, I would prefer that we open up this conversation to the general public and make it a national conversation, because some of us have got very strong views on how leadership in this country is failing. If you look at the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and this is the week, the anniversary week of that Constitution, one of the geniuses of our Constitution, as many Kenyans and many people have said, is that, why did you guys want Chapter 6? the chapter on leadership and integrity.
Yeah.
Because they're saying one of our biggest challenges, right from even independence or even pre-independence, has been the way in which we are being governed, the way we are being led by people that leaders do not attain that the object. Leaders are lying, so that even today, as at Bomas, you know, again, in the context of civility, as Mheshimiwa Kenana said, you know, it is naive to think that Kenyans actually trust the political leadership in this country, that whatever will come out of Bomas of Kenya. And that's why you can see some of the agenda items there are actually targeting individuals. And that's partly why BBI failed. And I'm happy it collapsed, because it was expanding the executive to accommodate tribal regional leaders. And for that reason, you see Kenyans said that let's have Chapter 6. But then they also said in Article 104, can we have the right to recall and fire leaders? But who are the people who first killed Chapter 6? It's parliamentarians. When they passed the Leadership and Integrity Act, they made it so difficult and almost impossible to actually
recall it.
First of all, to recall, that one they killed, of course, because they could not. It's basically we are putting hyenas and goats in the same pen. And of course, when a goat is eaten by a hyena, why should we be surprised? So we are asking them to be judges in their own cause.
And remember, he has contested when joined that league.
No. I've only contested twice. Yeah. But see, Trevor, so I think one of the things that we really must address, and I think even Mheshimiwa Maanzo maybe and Kenan should have this in mind. Can Kenyans today trust the political leadership in this country, even as they discuss this broad agenda? Because it has been said, for example, if you look at the Finance Act, sorry to distract, if you look at the Finance Act, for example, in 2022, I remember, I think Raila Odinga, and I think that clip is there. He told Kenyans, stop backing, wacheni kubweka kama mbwa, because of the cost of living. And he said that, oh, you know, this is affected by the Russia-Ukraine war, it's not only unique to Kenya. And that time he was defending the government of the day, okay? As this leader of opposition, as a handshake partner, as a political advisor to the president, Uhuru Kenyatta at that time. Now, he lost the election, now he's using that as an excuse to undermine the government of William Ruto. I mean, it is his right to say that. But this changing goalposts, you know, it's now what Kenyans are also asking, but can we trust this leadership? Why did Azimio leaders, and I'm sure Maanzo is here, why did they walk out from debating the Finance Act? Because Kenyans were expecting that they would put a very strong case against the Finance Act or the provision that they think are wrong in that Finance Act. But they chose the easier option to walk away. They failed their constituents. Now they are pretending that we can go to Bomas of Kenya and address those issues that they should have addressed on the floor of the House. I would have wished to see Mheshimiwa Maanzo on the Hansard, evidence on the Hansard, saying that I oppose this provision of this act because of...
It wasn't brought to Senate.
No, Mheshimiwa Maanzo, listen.
I'll give you a chance to respond. Not necessarily just Senate, but...
Trevor, I'm trying to address the pretense and the political conmanship in this country from both sides. You know, from both sides. When Mheshimiwa Maanzo here and his team are collecting 15 million signatures, and I say collect even 50 million signatures, you will not remove President Ruto from office. At least, if you want us to believe that you actually are good politically and you mean well, bring a motion of impeachment on the floor of the House, because those are the mechanisms. To go out there and pretend you're collecting million signatures and now you're making it a subject of conversation at Bomas, you're lying to Kenyans. And I hope the culture of political lying in this country will one day stop.
It's not there because
I'll give you a right to respond.
Yes, first of all, I want to say that the Finance Act did not come to Senate, and that's one of the...
And remember the issues in court. So
that's one of the issues pending in the Constitutional Court. And in fact, we'll be making submissions on 13th next month. So then, when you look at the whole matter, I have just stated that the process of constitutional change must be owned by the people. That has been decided in the BBI case. It has not been overturned. And if we ignore the people, that the people must participate in this process, the different sectors, the church, you know, the activists and political parties, Kenyans of goodwill, nobody should be prevented from participating in the proposed constitutional changes, because all these are constitutional changes. But again, the truth of the matter, whether people like it or not, the effects of the high cost of fuel has made life very difficult in Kenya. Kenyans are suffering. Life is very hard here. Life is very expensive. The government knows that a lot of our investors are leaving Now, this time not to Rwanda.
Because of the mandamandas.
No. This time not to Rwanda. There are also blackouts, which are not justified. And by the way, I've stated that the 2 ministers involved in the blackout should actually resign. The inconvenience they have caused to Kenyans is so immense. It's more dangerous and more expensive than the mandaman.
Well, the 2 ministers.
This is Chilchil and Murkomen should resign, honestly. I mean, how will Murkomen sit in his office and a plane cannot land because there is a blackout and there are no generators or solar panels to light up the runway? The moment a plane is on a landing gear, it can't turn back. So if the lights go off on the runway, you expect a very serious disaster. So for that matter alone, he should resign. He should not be forcing some manager in the airport to resign. So I'm saying that there are many things which must be rectified in this country. And we must involve the people. The moment Bomas does not go beyond the leadership, then we have a very big problem. We must, and the cost of living. Now people are migrating to Tanzania. They are finding Tanzania easier to invest, with the tough talk in this country and the dishonesty from government quarters, that the people who have perpetrated corruption...
And political leaders.
Yes, the people who have perpetrated corruption for a long time. The people who have been cartels for a long time. They are now saying cartels must move out of the country. I mean, it's such pretense. We need a honest dialogue in this country, and I am very sure if President Ruto wanted to cause change and wanted to fight corruption, he can do it. It is only on the mouth. When you go to the realities of fighting corruption, one of it is to empower EACC. EACC must be devolved to the counties. That's where the biggest corruption is taking place now. And the Senate is overwhelmed by the corruption in the counties. We need, structures in the counties whereby EACC is present in the counties and is investigating matters on a daily basis. And there is a place Kenyans can report where they see, they see corruption. So there is a very big problem in the country which must be sorted out by all Kenyans. But first and foremost, let's address the cost of living.
Trevor, I have an objection.
Okay.
Yeah?
Objection number 1 with the guru. Yes, let's start with you.
First of all, Mheshimiwa Mahanzo, with all due respect, you should not come here and lie to Kenyans. I mean, talk about the problems or the failures of other entities of government. In fact, me, I wish...
I've not said it's a failure. There is no sufficient budget for expansion of EACC.
No.
If it is not in this year's budget, how are you going to help fight corruption?
I have a proposal.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, EACC should be abolished.
In totality?
In totality. And let's strengthen the investigative arm of the DCI, because to say that a governor has not accounted for money and that money was budgeted, that is theft of public resources. Senate here has failed, and so is Honorable Mahanzo, sorry to say this, because every time a governor is brought before the Senate, every time the Auditor General tables the report and says that Governor XYZ has not accounted for certain funds, it is the same Senate that actually converts the findings of the Auditor General report into recommendations, into comments. By the time the Auditor General writes a report, he has made a finding that Governor so-and-so has actually stolen money. Let's demystify this thing. To say that EACC must be expanded is another white lie. Listen, if you cannot account for public money, you have actually stolen it. There is sufficient provisions in the penal code, in the criminal procedure,
and even in the Constitution,
and even in the Constitution to actually punish you.
Okay.
You want to see people being arraigned for theft of public money or diversion of funds. We are as practicing lawyers. You know very well that, Manzo, when you cannot, for example, account for money of a client, and we are all required to have 2 accounts, your own personal account or office account and a client's account. If you cannot account money for a client, it's actually called theft by agent.
Okay.
We don't necessarily need as EACC to investigate that.
All right.
So these governors, when they cannot account for money, they have actually stolen money on behalf of the people. And Mahanzo here and his team at the Senate ought to be able to grill these guys very strongly.
Okay.
And to hold them accountable.
All right. That is objection number 1 which you'll respond to. Let's see objection number 2.
Just 1 minute on that particular issue on the Senate.
I think before...
Once to add his, then you'll respond. Now, because now Senate is on the spot now.
There are certain things that we must accept. One of the reasons why the framers, and I'm glad that my framer here, the framers of the current constitution deliberately decided to recommend because ultimately it's the public that made the decision to have a very progressive and pragmatic constitution. And I'll say this, 90% of this constitution is a first-class constitution, one of the best actually in Africa. But I think there are certain salient things that we must accept. Without prejudice, let me come back to the issue of finance bill. This constitution that we have is a mixture of the Westminster model and the American model. And deliberately is a unique Kenyan constitution. That is my take. That's
very developmental.
Yes, it's my take, it's my understanding. What we expected, and this was the logical issue to do, by the time the Minister for Finance and Planning of the Kenya Kwanza government was presenting the annual budget, from the budget policy statement to the budget, the alternative government
will present it.
Should have also had their budget as shadow government. And in fact, right now, maybe people are not even getting the president right. What the president is alluding to when he says we should have the office of the official opposition, what it will come with is an office that is funded, is an office that will have shadow ministers, is an office that will enjoy
we already have that in it.
Absolutely. No, just a minute. You know, it's my take. Because you are limiting your discussion, your take to Article 108. We just talk about that. Yes, that can also be modified. What we should have, and that's why I say the rule of law is subjective. It's the way you take it as an individual. So by the time we're going for mandamando and protest, we shall have gone back to our boardrooms and come up with the alternative budget and say, look, this is the first Kenya Kwanza budget. These are the pitfalls. These are the shortcomings against what they said. But we are reading from two different scripts. These guys were promoting, the Kenya Kwanza government has a budget anchored on the hustler narrative. The other group had a budget in their subconscious anchored on the Big Four agenda. So we are reading from completely different scripts. Like now, the way you are dressed in a formal suit. I'm dressed in a casual manner. This is my choice. That is your choice. If you want to push me to behave the way, dress the way you are dressed, I will bust, because that might not be my test.
Okay.
That is what we are trying to do. And when that failed, people resorted to the streets. We have a country. What is causing
the challenge? Which is not necessarily a wrong thing.
Agree.
To protest.
That is why election is a competitive process. There's a winner and a loser. What is expected is like marriage. You compete for a beautiful girl. Someone runs away with her, or a handsome guy. The moment that vote is made...
I've never known that women will be paraded and then men will be told, let's compete for her.
No. It happens. The moment that vote is solemnized, the competitors must cease competition for that particular handsome boy or beautiful girl, isn't it? In our context, the winner, the loser, wants to determine how the winner is supposed to behave. It doesn't apply in a democracy. That's why we're saying this government has an agenda. Allow them to execute their agenda. If they fail, you will have a time to audit. You will have time to say they failed. Take it back to the public. And how do you determine? The public court ultimately will
decide.
Decide
Manzu,
on vote.
Your response.
Very briefly. Before he responds on this, you see, we have a document. This document is not perfect. From my perspective, there are certain things that I feel there has to be changed. It has to be changed.
What are those things?
No, just a minute. My friend here does not believe in the workings of Parliament. The first arm of government. He doesn't believe.
That's not true.
Because he doesn't believe in the role of Parliament.
No, that's not true.
For me, as a political practitioner, I am truly a student
you have to withdraw
of a parliamentary...
you have to withdraw that because, let me tell you, as a lawyer, I know the role of Parliament, executive and the judiciary.
Okay, my brother. We'll align that. For me, as a political practitioner, I truly believe in the role of the legislature. These things combined, the way we are doing it right now, is going to give us an opening. The public will participate. This committee is not going to just sit in the boardroom. Let's give them a benefit of doubt. Let's allow them to... I'm sure there'll be public interaction.
60 days,
there'll be public participation. They may not agree on everything. But for me, I say this is a good step. I wish this is what was done the first 2 months before we thought of collecting sections. Those questions were non-intersection. It was a non-issue. Non-issue.
Let's bring in...
So allow Mheshimiwa Mwanzo, when you meet, even the Senate has a problem. I want to commend the Honorable Chepkonga. There's something that has happened.
Let him talk about the Senate because he's the senator.
No, but there's something that has happened. In Parliament, I'm senior. There's something I will tell you. Honorable Chepkonga has come up with he has expanded his horizon of thinking. He has come up with a very good bill that will reduce this constant friction jurisdictional conflict between the two houses, which has not been addressed by even the framers of the current constitution.
Okay.
A bill, like right now, the two houses are led by two speakers.
Mweshi is forgetting one thing.
Yeah.
If he had read carefully the harmonized draft of the Constitution of Kenya of 2009, which we published in November, it is them who watered down that.
True.
That
even the Senate we have.
It's true. They had even said that Senate is a upper house with veto power.
Yes.
They are the ones who went to Naivasha.
The Senate you recommend. I also have the notes. The Senate you recommended.
He was part of the drafters of the Constitution.
Okay, what we're trying to say is this.
Yes.
We do not envisage a situation where, and I like the way Honorable Chepkonga should be recommended wherever he is. Right now, we do not have a gridlock between the two houses, simply because both houses, since actually the promulgation of the current constitution, both houses the leadership of both houses were occupied by people from the same party.
Okay.
Should there be a time when the leadership will come from two different parties? I can tell you from day one, there'll be gridlock.
Okay.
That's why
let me hear what Manzo has to say, because we're running out of time and we have a lot of feedback coming through. Yes, Manzo.
Yes, I just wanted to say that as the Senate is doing his job. The Senate does not prosecute. You know, the Senate is not a prosecutor.
Anytime an issue is before the senators, they rubbish it.
Eventually, the Senate recommends it to the right officers, and one of it is ESCC, and the other one is DCI. And quite a number of governors have been summoned. Even now, former governors have been summoned to the Senate to explain issues or money which got lost during their time. But the role of prosecution does not belong to Senate, honestly. The role of prosecution belongs to the police. And as my colleague have said, we need to strengthen the role of DCI, the role of prosecution, so that, you know, people who have stolen public money are prosecuted. That's where the weak link is right now. But the Senate has done its job perfectly. It's very busy. The committees dealing, you know, with the oversight are very, very busy. And quite a number of issues which have come up have been processed. So I believe as going forward, because, you know, to amend the Constitution, some of the things be required, like a leader of official opposition. That is changing the main structure of government under Article 255 to 257. And therefore needs a referendum. So one of the realities the country must face is we must have a referendum. The question is will President Ruto accept the referendum? Because if he fails in the referendum, that means he has also failed the nation.
Okay. All right, let's bring in some feedback. There's a lot of feedback coming through, but we run out of... No. Let's bring some feedback. We've asked them to send in feedback. If their views are valid, let's bring that up and see what they're saying. Then I'll give you all a chance for closing remarks, because we're running out of time here. At Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Bobo Tieno Wino says, kindly ask Dr. Kurokot, did he abandon Punguza Mizigo? Because I haven't seen him joining the dialogue team with his grievances alongside Third Way Alliance Kenya. Very briefly.
They'll come. No, we have not abandoned. Punguza Mizigo is still on the table. Okay.
All right. Bobo Tieno Wino says, kindly ask, that's what we've asked just now. Evans Wanyela, cartels is a big industry that requires radical surgery. Mere rhetoric, public outbursts, and threats from the head of state won't help in eliminating cartels, okay? Godi Baraza says the state of our nation is now oscillating between tough pledges given against the corrupt dealings in the country and the willingness to carry out the same pronouncements on corruption. It's a matter of all talk but no credible action. Okay? Babu Michael says, I wonder and ask myself when this cartel issue will end in this country. Any government uproots one cartel and plants another. There are pictures going around on social media about a sugar company now developed in the middle of a tea plantation. Okay? Tyson says that the level of arbitrary deprivation of property involved in this sugar issue should be investigated. Holding people ransom for the mistake of investing and managing business well is unacceptable. Reduce the cost of production and stop harassing investors. Okay? Brian Chemwa says we need a comprehensive approach that involves collaboration between government, industry stakeholders and farmers, which can lead to positive changes in the sugar sector. My worry is why Agriculture CS is silent over the sugar crisis in the country. Okay? Kipto Ruto says anybody found guilty of corruption should encounter serious repercussions as an instructive example for others. I stand solidarity with the president's position on this matter. Thieves should have no space in our country. Ronald Kivinda says, personally, I feel no threat there, and I think the audience align with me because they even made the finishing comments. Even so, if it's a threat, the only persons feeling threatened are those responsible. Okay. Leonard Masika Says, we are getting used to bold words of Kenya Kwanza government with nothing happening. We can forgive the president on the virtue that nothing wrong shall happen since we know what he says and he can do. He has been in government for a long time. He knows cartels. He should act instead of mere words. Ken Nyaminde says finishing cartels in Kenya is as hard as finishing the mafia in Italy. Their roots are deep in the system. Kenya is a country run by untouchable cartels. KMC was doing good under Badi. Let's go back to that arrangement. Okay? Angela Lazaro says issues to be on the table should be on a national TV for public scrutiny. Most Kenyans raising concerns over the winner takes it all notion and misuse of national police like ruling party youths. Okay? Remy Butia says it's time to show the world that bipartisan agreement in this country is possible and that Kenya can still find ways to tackle our biggest challenges, not just appease the loudest voices. Okay, it's time now for closing remarks, but I'd like to hear, starting with Aidan Kenan, closing remarks on this.
The assumptions we are making is that the outcome of this bipartisan team will require a referendum. No. The outcome might require a constitutional change that can be handled by Parliament. There may be some that require a referendum. The others might require statutory changes. The others that might require just policy pronouncement. Okay. So it's not fair to say that we'll just, we hook ourselves that a referendum will be required. No. So we wait, let the team do their work, and whatever recommendations they will bring is what I think we should accept. But finally, let me say on this, in our governance platform, and we are lucky that we have had elections since our independence, whether they were flawed or not. We should count ourselves as lucky. Look at what has happened in the region. And look at what has happened in the past. So we should appreciate our democracy and ensure that whatever little things that we do adds value and encourages our democracy and allow people in that vibrant, we have a very vibrant society. Yeah. And allow the government that has been elected to do its work and the opposition also to do their work. And ultimately, the Kenyan public are the ones who are going to referee and say, look, the government got it right, or the alternative government got it right in a civilized manner. Okay. And I'm glad that our friends, as represented by the Honorable Mwanzo, have submitted to the rule of law. Okay. And that is what we require.
All right, Mwanzo.
Let me say that, we all have one country, and we need to live here harmoniously. We want to have a country which can attract investors so that there is vibrant, entrepreneurship in the country so that we can grow our nation. And the bipartisan talks are important, but most important is that Kenyans must be worked for. The government in power should not just talk, say we have no time, 1 year is gone, no action. Most important, we must reduce the cost of living. If you overtax a nation, then you kill small-time businesses and you kill spending. And therefore, you collect even less taxes. So that particular matter of cost of living, the high cost of fuel, must really be looked to urgently. And it might not necessarily go to bombers. It is something the government can sort out as it assesses the situation so that they can lower the cost of living of Kenyans. When Kenyans are not happy, you expect them to demonstrate. And Article 37 has not been deleted from the Constitution. There should be no double standards, and I believe nobody should be killed while peacefully demonstrating.
Okay. Dr. Court, first start with the issue of the Punguza Mzigo before you give your closing remarks. There was a direct question to you.
Yeah. So I would say...
Do you want to remind him something that he has forgotten?
It was a direct question from the audience.
First of all, let me just say that Punguza Mzigo is still very much on the table. Okay. And of course, like I said, it was really about the common good in this country. But it is the same political cartels, besides the sugar cartels and the rest, who actually undermined and sabotaged it. It went to the county assemblies, was debated. Members of the county assembly were intimidated. In fact, they were bribed. On average, they were all being paid 150,000 Kenyan shillings. And I want to thank the county assembly of Wasingishu, Turkana, Machakos, and I don't know which other county, who ably actually debated that bill and said we can see the common good in this bill. So it is still there, and I'm more than happy to reintroduce it afresh with a little bit of amendment. Okay. Lastly, I want to remind Mheshimiwa Mahanzo and Adan Keinan that because they are not new in politics, can we try to actualize political promises? Because, for example, what we are trying to discuss at Bomas of Kenya is not anything new in this country. There have been reports of commissions, of inquiries, and all that discussion. The question has been the implementation of the recommendations of those reports. For example, if it's matters land, matters governance, I mean, you have got the Ndungu report, the Akiumi, the Waki report, the Krigla, all those reports. At least let's actualize them. Because if we don't actualize them, let's not hide behind the fact that the idea of a democratically elected government. We should be able to learn lessons from what's happening in Francophone Africa. You see the way the ordinary Mwananchi is actually celebrating the takeover by the military of government, because they say, democratically elected governments are betraying the people. They don't live up to the people's wishes. And I hope Kenya Kwanza administration, and I'm not threatening them, and not that I'm planning any coup, but I'm saying you should see what's happening in other regions, that you say you are a democratically elected government, then actualize what you promise the people of Kenya. When Mheshimiwa Kenani keeps on defending the government in terms of, oh, it's just 1 year in government, you are the same people who came up with timelines. You say by January, you will do this. By 6 months, you will do that. Nikieka Biblia chini, nitafanya hivi. So Kenyans want to see that because we believed in you. And so actualize this political program. Otherwise, read the script. 2 months. What's happening in Francophone Africa, even though I don't support military coups and takeover, but there is a strong message, Trevor, in the context of Pan-Africanism that's emerging from those Francophone Africa coups. Number one, they're talking about the end of neocolonialism and imperialism. They are saying we should no longer be exploited. Our natural resources should not be taken away to be processed in other countries. Number three, they are also talking about the unity of Africa. I think I love those messages. Not necessarily to say it's okay to go on military coups, but that conversation for me, I think, is very, very, very important.
All right. That's why we have to thank you so much for the State of the Nation. Dr. Guru Okot, Party Leader, Third Alliance, and Dr. Aidan Kainan, Member of Parliament, Eldas, and Dan Manzo, Senator from Makueni. Thank you so much for making time. That is the State of the Nation. Coming up next is Cooking Tips. Bye for now.
Wait, we can learn from there.